I blew Shauna's mind with
You blew my mind. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Hold on. Are you talking about the butter? Do you put the corn on the butter?
No,
and you spin the ear?
No. This is a new way of buttering corn I've never heard of.
Okay.
It's not from a can,
No,
right?
you use bread. So what you do is you take...
Oh, I've heard of this.
Yeah, you take a slice of bread and you butter the bread and then you put the corn and you rub it on it
I never heard of this in my life.
I blew Evan and Shauna's minds because I'm like... Because Shauna's like, who butters with bread? And I'm like, I do. I grew up that way. That's how I did it as a kid.
Where are you from originally?
Connecticut.
Okay, so you're not from the Midwest, which I am. And we did both. You know, you had... It depended on where you were eating said corn.
Oh.
It'd be like, here's your fucking like stick of butter. Here's your bread with butter on it. Butter it, whatever. Fuck you. So
wait, would you put the corn on the stick of butter? And
oh,
rub it
for
that way?
fuck sure.
Why would you ruin a stick of butter that way?
Well, it's that stick of butter is just for the corn.
Oh, it's only
it's the corn butter.
Corn.
Yeah, it's right. You put it in the drawer in the fridge marked corn butter. Wait. Other people don't have that drawer in their fridge?
I'm going to have it now.
Right? I can't not have it. I can't unsee that drawer now.
Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Evan Crean. I'm editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of BAFTA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living.
My name is Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly, Orlando Weekly, and BAFTA person.
Hi, I'm Megan Kearns. I am editor of Bitchflix, and I'm a freelance critic, and I am also a BAFTA person.
All right. We three BAFTA.
BAFTA peeps.
We three BAFTA. Anyway, sorry.
So on this week's show, we're going to be talking about some movies.
There's a lot of show this week.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Memory, Origins of Alien, the documentary about Alien.
Memory! It's not from Cats. I don't remember the melody.
That would be
a
very different musical. Alien the musical.
Christ.
That was done recently, right?
What?
Didn't some kids put on an Alien the musical or something?
Oh, kids.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, they
some
did.
Like high school
they
and Ridley
did.
Scott gave them some props or something.
Oh, I don't know about that, but yeah, they did.
He gave them permission to do it. We're also not Alien. We're also going to talk about King of Comedy, which we watched recently, kind of in reference to Joker. We're going to talk
the biggest
about
movie in the world, apparently.
Boo. We're going to talk about Lucy in the Sky, but not with diamonds.
Oh, no. That song's in there.
Oh, is it?
Oh, it is.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Because this movie doesn't have an original idea. But, sorry, I spoiled it.
Womp. And then finally, we don't talk about TV a ton in here, but we felt like it was kind of important to talk about the new Netflix miniseries, Unbelievable, which we've all seen. So
which is
we're
not from Schubert Dip.
No. It's not that unbelievable. Oh, what the
was that?
Not that unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I guess let's start with Memory, Origins of Alien. The documentary.
Yeah.
TM.
I was, you were so psyched about it, and I was like, well, you know what?
I was psyched about it.
We talk about movies in all caps in our emails because it's easier to do that than to try to figure out italics on Gmail.
Yeah, in the app, it's kind of a pain in the ass.
Yes, it is. So every movie looks really exciting. So I was like, ooh, Megan's excited to see this one.
Well, I was. That is a true story.
Yeah.
Until I actually watched it.
I know, right?
What a letdown.
It was.
Oh, my God.
It was kind of like one of those things where it's like, hey, I have an idea. Why don't you tell me every story I've already heard about Alien?
Oh.
Yeah.
And not even get into, I mean, you can't get into every story, of course, but even the things that they touched upon that could have been interesting or were partially interesting, I was like, wait a minute, but you're not getting into it over here. You're not talking about this, or you're not doing that. So it just, I felt like the things that were in, I was like, I know that, and so does everybody else. And then the things that they like touched on, I was like, but wait, you're missing this, and you're not talking about that.
I wonder if this is why Ridley Scott's not actually in it, except for archive footage.
Well, I was curious about that because I was like, where the fuck is Ridley Scott? Where's Sigourney Weaver? And apparently, Ridley Scott couldn't do it or something like that. Like the director kind of gave a vague, I feel like, because I just read the interview, he gave kind of a vague reason as to why, but he did try to get Ridley Scott, and then Sigourney Weaver couldn't do it either, and he was like, well, they're busy people, and then
maybe just don't make a documentary,
right then. And he also said, he's like, well, it was very serendipitous that we didn't get Ridley Scott because it's not really about him anyway, it's really about Giger and Dan O'Bannon.
It's about Dan O'Bannon.
Yeah, it really is.
It should have been. And if you're going to make a Dan O'Bannon documentary, which I endorse,
sure,
make a better one.
Yeah.
Because this is a guy who, all the legends say, like, he's got something like, 100 unproduced screenplays or something like that? I mean, just so many.
Like
and his wife, widow, whatever you want to call her, widow, technically. She makes a kind of just a quick reference to how much material he had. And it's like, well, that's the documentary I want to see, like all of the sequel to The Thing, which I just made that up.
Right. Give me all the unproduced stuff.
Yeah,
tell me
totally.
all about that crazy shit that he was working on.
Yeah, that would have been interesting to know. Those things.
I did appreciate seeing Veronica Cartwright.
Sure.
In the documentary, and to some degree Tom Skerritt, but I feel like Tom Skerritt, as much as I like him, will do any documentary. I don't know why I feel that way, but
well, he doesn't really add much to the conversation, whereas at least Veronica Cartwright has some interesting things to say, and like especially the thing that struck me about what she was talking about, and she wasn't the only one, but talking about the smell of the chestburster scene, and how they walk in and it's like so revolting, like she wanted to vomit because the smell was so intense, and I was like, ooh, that's kind of interesting.
They had bought a bunch of like cow and pig innards,
as one does.
Yeah. For what's his name? Is it Kane?
Kane.
Yeah. I also, this is one tidbit I didn't know, that O'Bannon wrote the screenplay to have all of the characters on the ship be male or female. He didn't care.
Oh, you didn't know that? See,
no, I never knew that.
Yeah. So I did a deep dive on the script and did research on it a long time ago. For a piece, and what's really interesting, and it's interesting, I'm glad they mentioned that, because I think it's an important thing to mention and to know. But the other thing that they don't mention, so there's a director who comments on how great Ripley is as a character, and isn't she so fascinating and complex, and it's unfortunate we don't have more interesting and complex female characters. And it's like, oh, but she was written originally to be a man, and it's like, that is technically true, but kind of not really, because yes, they envisioned the character Ripley as Roby, that was the original name, but they did technically think like, oh, all the characters could be gender neutral, like in the sense that it could be a man or a woman. And also the interesting thing about the way they originally wrote Ripley as Roby was the characters are almost exactly the same. They make the same decisions. They have almost the exact same dialogue. But the one huge difference is that obviously in Alien, Ripley is like, no, we're not letting Kane in, because he, we don't know if he's infected. We're not letting him in. And Roby doesn't do that. So it's interesting that when it did switch to having Ripley be a woman, she's like
the naysayer.
She's right. Exactly. She's asserting herself, and she's like, no, we have to be logical about this. We have to think things through. And so, I was like, that's great that they're mentioning that, but I'm like, oh, I wish they actually like gave the whole entire story about the script. So
there's also one other interesting tidbit, which I did know this but had forgotten, that Walter Hill was originally attached to direct it with David Giler and who was the third guy? I don't remember.
Oh God,
the three of them they've done a lot of movies together.
Yep.
And Hill was like, fuck it. I'm not. I got something else to do.
He's like, can this be a buddy cop movie?
He went and made some other movie, and the guy who hosts some Turner Classic Movie show, he's like, and with the movie he made, and he names it.
Southern Comfort.
Yeah,
right?
Southern Comfort. He's a good movie. He's like, but it's not Alien. And at the same time, yes. But I mean, could Walter? We all know what happened with Alien 3 when those guys were actually involved. So it's a bad movie, which I also don't think is necessarily their fault.
No,
entirely.
I don't actually think I don't think Alien 3 is a bad movie. I mean, it's not. It's got some issues, major issues, but I think it's a bad Alien movie. I think it's bad if when you look at the other two, which are so fantastic.
You
and
mean
brilliant.
The first two, the only two?
Correct, the only two that exist, as far as I'm concerned, too. But yeah, so when you compare it to the first two or the only two, then it's not a good Alien movie. But if you took that separately and made that into a film, it'd be great.
I think
it'd be
it would
really
be
interesting.
You have to make Charles Dance live longer, though.
Sure.
If only because he's such a good actor.
He
you don't
is.
want him to die 25 minutes into the movie. Although it was a surprise. So,
surprise, yeah.
But anyway, we're
definitely.
not even talking about fucking Alien and Memory, the making of it.
Right.
Fuck
So
that
it's
shit.
just what? Just talking heads, people sharing some behind the scenes stuff? Is it like a
Yeah.
comprehensive look at the making of the movie from like soup to nuts? Or is
No.
it like
No,
just
it's not.
No.
weird remembrances
There's
and
a-
trivia, basically?
Basically, there's a lot of pre-production talk, which kind of makes sense, and there's a lot of
Right.
like
The art direction
geek-
on it is something.
Yep.
There's a lot to dig into.
There's
You can make a whole
yeah.
documentary just about that, I guess.
which they have, I think. So
I think
I mean,
so, yeah.
and all the stuff they used of Giger, it's like, well, I already knew this about him.
Right, exactly.
I actually didn't know that he was also married. I thought he was just some fucking weird loner,
He's
some weird
not.
Swiss loner.
Right.
But yeah, so
But there's also the way the documentary opens annoys me on so many levels with like this weird, it opens with the Temple of Delphi.
oh right,
Yeah, in Greece. And yeah, exactly. And
I'm
then
giving Megan a quizzical look right
I
now.
know.
My eyebrows are furrowed.
correct. And there are 3 women who I'm like, who the fuck are these women?
oh I know. I
Yeah,
actually
and
fast
then
forwarded through that because they were so creepy.
It was so creepy. And later you find out they're the reenactment or embodiment of Furies from Greek myth, because apparently one talking head talked about how Alien is about, female repression, and the Furies are all about female repression. And it was the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I failed
was
to
like,
see the connection.
what is happening? Like, why do we need to see this? So yeah, so that was incredibly annoying. The other thing, there were some interesting, not really like groundbreaking per se, but some interesting commentary on how Yaphet Kotto and Harry Dean Stanton's characters exhibit
the blue collar.
the
angle.
blue collar and class struggles, and who gets the right to talk and who gets the right to be heard, which I thought was interesting. But what annoyed me about this is that they didn't really they talk a lot about, or not a lot, but they talk about the sexism and misogyny, and they talk about how, the whole film is about the fear of male rape and pregnancy and
Which
penetration.
I've heard that before,
of course,
too.
1,000 times. But what annoyed me that they didn't include in that is they didn't talk about women not being heard in it, as far as, they talk about the scene where Ripley has the magazine being shoved down her throat by Ash, but what they don't talk about is that's a porn magazine. It's not just any magazine.
Oh. Right.
And they don't talk about how Ripley in both the first film and in the second film she is also prophesying things. Like, she's also talking about how we can't let Kane in, and she's overridden. And then in the second one, she's talking about how, we have to be careful at LV 426 and no one's listening to her. So she's like, and I've written this before, she's like a modern day Cassandra where no one's listening to her. So it's not just that the blue collar men are not being listened to. It's also the women who are not necessarily being listened to. And so, I wish they'd talked more about that. I also wish they had talked about how Ripley is, the final girl, and there's a lot of nods to slasher films with her, and also Barbara Creed's The Monstrous Feminine, and like there's just so much I wish they could have, and I wish they had delved in more deeply, rather than just kind of hitting a lot of the same beats that we know, that we've seen in behind the scenes and seen in interviews. And
Yeah, it was bullshit. Fuck it.
Okay, I'm glad I
That's
didn't
the short
spend
version.
the $6.99 to rent it.
I'm
or
Dallas.
however much it was.
And you're, what was Veronica Cartwright's name in the movie?
Lambert.
In that scene where he's like, just give me the short version.
The other thing that's interesting too is I found the documentary a lot more interesting when they really dug in deep about the chestburster scene.
Yeah.
And I almost wish it had just been a documentary about the chestburster scene.
That would have been
And-
cool.
Right? And it's interesting because the guy who directed it did the documentary on the psycho shower scene.
Oh.
And so I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this would have been
Analyze
cool.
the scene, yeah.
That would have been really cool if he just kind of dug in deep, because that's when I thought the documentary was at its best, was when it was looking at that scene.
Not so much with the Furies.
Yeah,
No.
hard pass. on
No,
that.
but there were, I will say this, like there were some, I guess, I'd say it's interesting stuff about looking at, the Inception, like the Francis Bacon paintings of the crucifixion and some other mythologies. I don't know. I kind of like that stuff. But anyway.
All right. Well, there you go.
But
That's
yeah,
memory.
it was such a letdown.
You skip it,
unfortunately.
everybody.
Yeah, don't watch it.
I know it's on your Instagram feed right now, trying to tell you to watch it, but ignore it.
Pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hard pass.
Okay, then. So let's talk about The King of Comedy, which I had not seen until this past weekend.
I didn't know that.
First time watching. It was one of those Scorsese movies that a lot of people have been telling me for years that I need to see it. It's one of his more overlooked, one of his more misunderstood movies. And just hearing about how...
What's to misunderstand?
I think just a lot of people, I don't know,
well, they
don't care for it because it's so cringy and so, like, it's such a slog to get through.
Well, yes and no. I think what I kind of forgot about this, and maybe it's just because I saw the Joker that I'm looking at it in a different light, but I found it much less cringy than I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, it's still cringy watching it. But I'm glad that I saw it, and I'm glad that I watched it in the context of Joker, which, you know, a lot of people are saying, okay, you know, there's a lot of homage in it to both Taxi Driver and King of Comedy, and obviously I know much more about Taxi Driver than King of Comedy, but I'm glad that I watched it because it really put Joker in context for me and why it's such a bad movie. Like the King of Comedy is just such. It's so much better. It's so much better at telling essentially the same story.
Without the shocking violence.
Without the shocking violence, but it's just, I don't know, it just does it so much better. And like, it's so obvious the areas looking back where Joker was just straight up, you know, ripping off scenes from King of Comedy.
Yeah.
Particularly the end when he's kind of running down the hallway. It mimics the scene where he's being chased through the TV offices.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's so much better. I mean, for those who haven't seen it, it's Robert De Niro plays an aspiring comedian named Rupert Pupkin, which in itself is an unsettling name to hear repeatedly.
Yeah.
And he's obsessed with this late night show that's hosted by Jerry Lewis, playing character Jerry Langford, which is basically, like, it's obvious that he's kind of, you know, it's Jerry Lewis, but he's playing like a version of what Jerry Lewis would be if he was just like a kind of late night host. So it's very much like De Niro's character in Joker.
I feel like I don't think a lot of people, you know, when you watch what's the one that Eddie Murphy remade that Jerry Lewis made, the Nutty Professor.
Nutty Professor.
And how Buddy Love is kind of supposed to be Dean Martin. I always felt like this was actually more Dean Martin.
Oh, than Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, Jerry Lewis is more Dean Martin. Like, he was playing Dean Martin as if Dean Martin were Jerry Lewis. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You know, but what I really like about it is how Jerry Lewis's performance is fucking deadpan all the way.
Oh yeah, it's great.
It's so great.
There's so many scenes where he's just sitting there silently, not saying anything, and it's just incredible. It's like, how could you not be saying something right now? How could you just be sitting there and dealing with this insanity that's happening around you?
I think that he's grown so cynical that it's just like, it's just another fucking day at the office. I almost feel like it's like that, you know?
I mean, if that's what happened, it fucking worked. Like, it worked in this part of having De Niro be this delusional, obsessed fan who tries to insert himself into his life, and him and Sandra Bernhard are just fucking crazy. The two of them obsessed with this you know, host, and the thing is that they kidnap him and they hold him hostage basically so that Rupert can go on the show and like get his shot at the big time.
Yeah. Which he does.
And
everybody loves him.
And the weird thing is he's not funny, but he's also not horrible either. It's like, it's this weird thing where like he gets up there and he's like actually not bad.
Yeah, he's not good.
He's not
but
good,
he's not bad.
But like he's maybe a little work away from being good, which is interesting because I expected him to be about as bad as Joker is. The Joker is when he gets on stage, Arthur. He's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And like they kind of had the same scene where he's, you know, Rupert's in his basement and he hallucinates, you know, an audience and he's like standing in this weird box room. It's fucking creepy.
Yeah.
But it's executed so much better. It's just.
Well, Martin Scorsese knows where to put a camera, for one thing. And I'm not saying, you know, the shooter on Joker didn't. I'm saying Todd Phillips really doesn't. You know?
Right. And I kind of dug the cynical ending of, you know, Rupert does become famous as a result of all this.
Yeah.
You know, it's even though he goes to prison and spends time in prison, he still gets the book deal and he still becomes famous. I kind of dig that cynical ending. I mean, it feels authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. Feels more authentic than shooting the host in the eye.
Right,
know?
and not being cut off on national television, and
Right.
then being arrested, and then escaping, but then also being
and
caught
then
again.
starting a movement and like, wait, were you arrested? Why are you back in the nut house?
Right.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, none of that shit made any sense. Anyway, I loved The King of Comedy. I thought it was really freaking good. I'm so glad that I saw it, but it really just put in perspective why Joker is A, just a ripoff, and B, terrible at doing it.
Well, also about The King of Comedy that I had forgotten, because I the last time I saw it I was in college, because you go through your Scorsese phase or whatever, and the last time I saw it, I it's been so long since I saw it, I forgot how irritating Rupert is. Like,
he's
super fucking irritating.
So irritating.
Like, I just completely forgot that. Like, if you met this guy in real... Correction, he's got two personas in the movie. He's got, who he is in front of Jerry, which is crazy. And then you've got who he is with Sandra Bernhard, which is also crazy. But it's like a more grounded crazy in a strange sort of way.
Well, it's like he's the sane one between the two of them, even though he is equally insane.
Right, right. His fantasy is, for some reason, not as crazy as hers.
Well, she wants to tie him down and fuck him and do all kinds of crazy stuff. It's like she's sitting there with him. He's all taped up to it. Jerry Lewis is all taped up to a chair, and she's like, "Wouldn't it be great if I just pushed all this stuff on the dinner table on the floor and we just had sex right here on this table?" And she knocks over candles that are lit onto the floor, and you're like, what is wrong with you? You're going to start a fire and kill yourself.
And she's also clearly from a really rich family, because and she mentions at one point that, or De Niro's like, you got a fucking townhouse. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, she's got a townhouse. And then you go to the townhouse and you're like, oh, no, this is a fucking Park Avenue townhouse.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. I forgot how much fun it is. And the other thing is it's cringy in the sense that Rupert's so pushy and just like just has no boundaries and
doesn't get that he can't just like insert himself into these, like, he comes by the studio and he says, "I'll just sit here and wait."
Yeah.
Oh no, that's okay. I'll just sit here and wait.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's fucking weird. Get out of here. You don't just sit somewhere and wait for somebody to get back to you. That's wrong and weird and strange. And the fact that you don't recognize that is bad.
Yeah.
This sounds so awkward. Like, my skin is like crawling.
Oh,
just
it is.
hearing
It is super awkward. But that's kind of its charm, I guess.
Well, there's so much cringeworthy comedy. I think that's why now, anyway. I think that's why maybe it didn't resonate with me the same way. I was just kind of watching it more as like, oh yeah, I fucking remember The King of Comedy. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun watching it. I loved Scorsese's cameo.
Oh yeah,
as the cue card guy,
nice,
or the director or whatever he was.
Yeah, he was the director of the show. I think.
Yeah, that's right. Right,
the late night show.
And he was telling Tony Randall that the jokes that Rupert Pupkin had written were actually good. So yeah. Anyway, I dug The King of Comedy. I'm glad I saw it again.
Me too. I'm glad I watched it. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it.
I started watching Mean Streets, which is one of the few Scorsese movies I haven't seen, and I've heard people say that it's kind of like a dry run for Goodfellas. Boy, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it is.
It's Goodfellas just with a dumber story. You know what? Dumber in air quotes. Just smaller time.
Right.
Anyway, and it doesn't have Joe Pesci.
Mm-hmm. One of my other favorite Scorsese movies from the era is After Hours.
See, no, I'm not an After
No,
Hours
not
person.
a fan?
No.
Okay.
Although I do appreciate how Griffin Dunn does look like he was up all night when they made it. So,
that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you guys tell me about Lucy in the Sky in parentheses with diamonds?
God.
Do I have to?
Oh my god! Are you in my head? I was literally just going to say, do I have to?
I know.
Yeah, so it's clearly good.
Well, do you remember the astronaut like a decade ago who like drove from, I want to say, Texas to Orlando?
It was
Wearing
definitely
a diaper?
Orlando. Yes.
Wearing the diaper,
Yeah.
which she, of course, now claims was not true.
Yes.
So this is that story.
But you don't find that out until like the end of the third act almost.
Yeah,
Like,
until like she's like, we're going on a road trip. And I was like, wait a minute.
Uh-oh.
And then
She's
the
like,
guy...
I packed my diapers and I'm ready for my road trip.
the guy that she's kind of... not stalking. That's not the right word.
No, she is most definitely stalking him.
Well, no, here's the thing, though. I would say it were stalking if it were a better movie. Because it's like all of a sudden she's crazy, you know?
Well, yeah, that pisses me off that all of a sudden she's crazy. And it's not, and listen, if you're going to make her crazy, and I hate that term, but like, if you're going to make her unhinged, if you will, like, why not have it be because of space? Like, why does it have to be because of a dude?
Oh, yeah, space madness. I
right?
like it.
Yes! Space madness! Woohoo! But yeah, no, it's because of a dude, because he doesn't want to, like, fuck her
because
anymore.
he wants to bone,
like, yeah.
you know, what's her name? What is her name?
Zazie Beetz.
Yeah.
But oh my God. She is totally stalking him though, because she breaks into his office and she's reading his emails, and then she's like driving by his house and she's showing up at place. That is stalking. She's definitely stalking.
She is Natalie Portman, by the way.
Oh yeah, sorry, it is Natalie Portman. My
yeah.
apologies.
So here's the short version. This is basically the story of, I don't know what her name is in real life, and we don't have to like. This is what the problem I had with it. One, what did I write? It's something to the effect of. This is like a really cheap way to make fun of someone, you know? Because it's just like, you've got an idea for a story that's a good idea. You've gone to space, you've seen space, you've seen the universe, and now you're going back to fucking Houston? Gross. You know?
Who wants to go back to reality
I'm going to live and fuck my husband who's got a mustache? Ugh. You know? I shouldn't say that. It's worse that he's a PR guy, and he's a Jesus freak. So there's that. So
Houston, we've got a problem with this story.
Yeah.
So, but it's Dan Stevens.
Yeah, and he's. You know what? I don't know if I've ever seen him play not a creep. Have I ever seen Dan Stevens play not a creep?
Downton Abbey.
Oh, see, I've never watched Downton Abbey.
Well, then, yeah, probably not then.
But
no, you haven't seen Dan Stevens.
But the thing that I always think of when I think of Dan Stevens, though, is Walk Among the Tombstones. So, and he's not really a creep in that, but he's a prick.
Yeah.
So,
the woman's name in real life is Lisa Nowak.
Yeah.
But
Lucy, her name is Lucy.
Lucy in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just seems like you've got this. I'm not saying that what Lisa Nowak did is excusable, because one, I don't know enough about the story. Two, you know, people have nervous breakdowns and they're serious. You know, like clinical depression is a serious fucking thing. And so to kind of make this movie that I don't think means to be glib, but is so fucking glib.
It so is. Well, here's the other really irritating thing. So before this film even came out, when it was still in pre-production and Reese Witherspoon was attached to star in it.
Oh, I didn't know
that. Yeah, and because it's Pacific Standard, her production company that produced it. And she was going to star in it. And it was going to be called Pale Blue Dot. And it was going to be about her PTSD after coming back from space. And it sounded really intriguing, sounded really interesting. And Marsha Ivins, who is a former astronaut, wrote in Time magazine about how this notion of, you know, astronauts not being able to handle their shit when they come back is bullshit, especially women not being able to handle, you know, space is, you know, incredibly sexist and awful. And
it's an interesting lens to put it through, though. I wouldn't have put it through that lens.
Sure.
More of that space hysteria.
Well, I think the interesting thing is, and it's not even interesting, it's just more like, duh, when Natalie Portman says, she's like, I went to the fucking universe.
No, 100%.
And now I've got to fucking take my fucking niece to school? Bullshit.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what's interesting.
Right. And that would have been interesting if the film had delved more deeply into that.
Yeah.
Instead of being so fucking boring.
Yeah. And being about her, like, jealous that, you know, John Hamm is fucking Zazie Beetz.
Like, who cares?
Yeah, who gives a shit?
I didn't care at all about any of them.
I know.
None of them. And I love Natalie Portman. And Natalie Portman is really giving it her all in this.
She really is.
She really is. She's committed to her Southern accent. She is committed, like, the body language of this character. Like, I was like, the thing I love about Natalie Portman is I love how the physicality in which she inhabits a character. Like, I love how in Vox Lux, her character has a very particular strut. And I love how in this film, well, I can't believe I'm going to say love with this film, but I do love how, like, I noticed, like, when she was, like, she also walked in a very confident way in that she was very comfortable within her skin. And when she's sitting talking to Nick Offerman, she's like sitting with her legs spread and kind of like hunched forward, like, you know, as if she's comfortable taking up space. And I love that Natalie Portman is, you know, going, you know, fully into her character. But she needed a much better script.
He just needed a better character.
Oh, God. Yeah. And, I was really excited to see this also. I mean, I was already excited to see this originally. But then I was excited. I was like, oh, Noah Hawley. Okay. Did Fargo. Did Legion. This is going to be weird and trippy and
not
cool.
weird.
No.
Not trippy.
No.
Not
Oh,
cool.
God. Wait. We have to talk about the aspect ratio.
Oh,
Constant
my God.
change.
Fucking irritating as
The
fuck.
aspect ratio continuously changes, and it's so annoying. And it could have been interesting potentially if they'd done it sparingly in a few scenes, but no, it just changes
it's all over the place. And every time
nonstop.
she's supposed to be feeling boxed in, like the aspect ratio changes to like 1:33 to 1, and it's like, come on, man, let me figure this out for myself. Okay,
but it's also the thing of it is that I was like watching it for patterns, and it doesn't.
There's no pattern,
right? It's not even consistent amongst its own patterns and rules in the film.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, we're gonna make this.
I know, it's like we're watching Grandma watch someone play golf, and now all of a sudden we're in super Panavision.
Like why?
Like why does Grandma get a new aspect ratio?
Is this the kind of thing? I have to ask, is this the kind of thing you think the average viewer would notice, or do you feel like this is
they would notice that
they're going to notice
the frame is
yes,
changing?
Yes,
oh yeah,
yes,
because it happens so much.
It happens so much.
Yeah,
and it's so disruptive.
And it also it is totally disruptive, and it's also happening rapidly in quite a few scenes.
Okay, yeah, I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad I didn't see this.
Yeah, I didn't. Or did I say this to you? Oh, I did. I said this to Megan afterwards. I wish Evan had seen this because this is so not an Evan movie.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, we were talking about that before we got on the mic. Megan, it still is learning what a not an Evan movie is.
Yeah. Well, there's your first clue there. Not Lucy in the Sky. Man, this is bad.
Oh, it's so bad. So bad.
Yeah. And there's a really strange, like almost every scene is Natalie Portman. There are a couple when like she's underwater and she's doing work that you see other people like reacting to what she's doing, because that would make sense because like she's fucking underwater like taking screws out of a thing. Like we don't need to see that. But then there's this like random scene with John Hamm at home.
Oh yes,
watching the Challenger explode, which I understand. You're going to space and you're worried that you might explode.
Sure.
But why do we all of a sudden get like psychological insight into him
when
there's no need for it?
None.
All he is in this movie is a dick.
Yeah.
That's all. Right. That's all he's there for.
It doesn't make him any more sympathetic. It doesn't make him
dick
more interesting.
As in like a jerk, or a dick as in like
both.
He just is a physical dick.
Both.
His character is just like so masculine in just the most irritating way.
In a one-dimensional way.
One-dimensional, and he plays it one-dimensionally, which I'm not sure is his fault.
I don't think it's his fault at all, actually, because I mean he's played, toxic masculine characters brilliantly before, obviously, but no, I don't think this is his fault.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if this is one of those things where everyone like signed up, and they're like, "Here's your script," which is the one you say yes to, and then 14 versions later, you're like, "Whoa, but you've signed the contract." So
you're like, "What is this thing?"
Yeah. That's what, if you believe Ali Sheedy, happened at Breakfast Club. They were like, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. So they made like John Hughes go back and cobble together like the script they wanted. I don't know why she'd lie about that on a fucking DVD. So anyway, Lucy in the Sky sucks, and the song is in there, and it's of course not the Beatles because that probably would have been too expensive. And all the music cues are kind of cheap too. I mean, I remember when Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds started playing, I was just like, here, we're going to put it here.
Yeah.
Ugh. I mean,
lame.
I would almost think it would be more, it would almost be transgressive. It would certainly be subversive, but it would almost be transgressive to have a movie called Lucy in the Sky and then the song's just not in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like, hee.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Isn't it at her grandmother's, like in the hospital, like when her grandmother's in the hospital, and then it's like that scene where she's like standing still, but like everything's moving behind her, and she's going.
It's a fucking Spike Lee shot.
Yes,
it's like how Spike Lee's always got the character on the dolly.
The dolly shot.
it's the Spike Lee Dolly, except it's not quite the same.
No, not quite, but yeah.
But it's definitely influenced by that.
But isn't that when the song plays? And because she's so traumatized.
Yeah, it's like, and he's like, oh, like Ellen Burstyn, what are you doing in this movie? Come on, man, you're better than this.
Right, but something else, Dave, that you said after the screening that I loved that you said this. You said, yeah, it was really good. You're like, you said if somebody's going to have a breakdown, I want them to earn that breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
And she doesn't earn it at all.
And I'm not talking about real life. You can break down over anything. I'm talking about in the cinema. It's like, what do you mean there's fucking cheese on my burger? I don't want fucking cheese. It's a hamburger.
And then you just unravel.
Yeah, exactly.
Into a puddle. It happens.
Yeah. Anyway, it's
all right. I'm glad I didn't see it.
It's a 1-star movie.
Be very glad. It is. Oh, God. There's very few films that I hate that make me like angry. This film pissed me off.
This movie didn't make me angry, but I checked my watch in the first hour twice, and I never check my watch in movies ever. So
that's when you know it's bad.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to something I think is a lot more interesting to talk about, which is the Netflix miniseries Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Oh.
It's been stuck in my head all day.
You're unbelievable. You know what's interesting about EMF? Nothing. But maybe something interesting is that guy sings in his real accent. He doesn't do the standard "I'm English, but I'll sing like I'm American" thing, which every singer does, basically, except for ABBA. So.
This movie does not involve any singing.
No.
No singing.
It is, this show does not involve any singing.
No, there's the scene where Merritt Wever is driving to Kansas and she's singing along with the radio.
That's right.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
But mostly the show is more somber than that.
Very.
Yes. It ends on a very uplifting note, which I like.
Well, yes and no.
I would say mostly uplifting.
Mostly uplifting.
I would say mostly.
Yeah.
So where to begin? I guess the high level summary is that it's based on a true story. I've heard.
Yeah.
It's Marie Adler, who's played by Kaitlyn Dever, is
from Booksmart.
Yeah.
And other movies, but
she's raped and she reports the rape, and the male cops who are working the case.
One of them is Dauber from Coach.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's true. He was.
He sure is.
Yeah.
Anyway, they are very quick to disbelieve her and poke holes in her story, and she comes from a very troubled background. Like, she has been in and out of foster care, and she's kind of just
since
trying
she was 3. You learned
since she was
later
3, and so she's trying to get settled in this kind of I don't know, like a youth community of people who are in a similar situation. You know, they have housing for them, and they have jobs and counseling. It's designed to get them on their feet. So anyway, she's raped. She reports it, and the cops start poking holes in her story, and even her former foster parents start to raise questions.
That's the thing that was insane.
Yeah,
is like
it's
Judith, is that her name? Whatever, the
Judith,
bitch.
Yeah.
The asshole.
Yeah.
We'll call her an asshole.
Yeah. Asshole's
yeah, she just... The thing that really made me mad, and it's the same thing that made Joan mad, because we talked about it afterwards.
It's an infuriating first episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult to watch, so just fair warning.
I had to stop about every 5 minutes because it was so brutal.
I described it to Megan before you started watching it like Zodiac.
Yes.
The Zodiac, the movie, the one with Mark Ruffalo. It's like the first 45 minutes, you're like, Jesus, all these fucking murders. And then like the next hour and a half, it's like, okay, it's just cops doing their thing. So
Right.
This is like, this is the TV version of that. The first episode is just like, fucking horrible sex crimes over and over, and she's got to tell the story over and over.
Right.
And then the next 7 episodes are more or less just like these cops like doing their jobs. And you see the fallout of Kaitlyn Dever's what happens
that
to her.
first episode is super tough, watching them, you know, her foster mother torpedoing her story.
Well,
and then
it's really just Judith, right? Isn't Colleen... She doesn't tell them...
No, she just thinks something weird is going on.
Yeah. She doesn't outright kind of like rat her out to the cops or plant the seed, but she also feels kind of shaky about it. She is better in that she at least...
she wants to help...
Yes.
Marie.
Yeah, Colleen,
in some way.
who's played by Bridget Everett, who I love.
Yes, she's very good.
She does talk to Judith, the other stepmother, who's played by Elizabeth Marvel. And
Who I've seen in other things and not hated.
Because because Judith says something like, "Oh, I was sexually assaulted."
That's the thing that made me angry.
She doesn't react the same way, and Bridget Everett has to tell her, "Yeah, well, different people react different ways to things, so that's a horrible barometer for trying to figure out if she's telling the truth or not."
So that's what Judith tells this fucking bald cop, is that she says, because there's one that's bald and there's one that's really bald. So she tells, like, I was assaulted and this is not how I reacted, and like I just fucking I felt rage. Like
you should. That's what you're supposed to.
You
should have
just like seen. You probably could have seen the red like crawling up my neck. So we get done with the episode, and I say to Jones, like, "What a fucking asshole with the fucking like." She didn't react the same way, and Jones like, "I know. Oh my god," you know. And so,
and the thing is that the cops pressure her into recanting, and
that scene is so.
It goes back and forth
so
a few times
awful.
whether she. It's like she recants and then it's like, no, maybe it did happen. And then they go back and forth. And then what's really shitty is then they charge her with making a false statement, which is horrible. And they say in the show it's something that's rarely done. It really is rarely done. So the fact that they actually go through with prosecuting that against her is like super fucked up. That they actually like take her to court over it because it ends up in the media that she, did this and then her identity is released. And so everyone in her community, all the other kids disown her and are horrible to her, and she just is put in a situation where she feels like she has no one she can turn to, including friends, supposed friends, former foster parents. She feels
she can finally turn to Brooke Smith.
Yes.
There is that.
But that's what was so enraging about that first episode, was that it is so common for rape survivors to not remember details, to seem like they're going back on their story. And it's not that they're going back on their story, but
it's their brain is doing things.
Exactly. It's
trauma.
protecting them.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which we get in the second episode. And I love how if you watching the first episode and the second episode contrasted with each other is great, because like the first episode is, more desaturated in color. The camera is, looking down at Kaitlyn Dever, to show her powerlessness. And then we get Merritt Wever, who is, oh my God, amazing.
She's so good in this
Like, I love her, but God, this was like the role she was born to play. And she's so tender and lovely with Amber, who is played by, I can't think of the woman's name, but she did Patty Cakes and
Bird Box. And
Bird Box, and she's in Paradise Hills coming out. And anyway, yes,
Danielle McDonald.
Yes, thank you. And she's so different and so warm, and I love how she pulls her aside into her car, and she's like, and
she says a couple times, like, you don't have to explain.
Yes, and
why
I love that
you feel that way.
Right? She's like, you don't have to tell anybody until you're ready. It's completely your decision.
Yeah, you don't have to explain yourself to me.
It really is a brilliant contrast in the investigative styles of the male cops versus Merritt Wever and Toni Collette, who are the central characters. And like they go back and forth with Kaitlyn Dever's character and all the stuff that's going on with her, but it mainly focuses on the investigation, and just seeing the difference in how they go about things is just, oh my God, it feels so much better to watch them doing the investigation, and the sensitivity and the tact, and not forcing victims to recount the story over and over again, multiple times to multiple people in like a short amount of time. And like one of the things that I thought was really incredible is Merritt Wever says to Danielle McDonald's character when she's taking her into the hospital for, the I forget what they call it, the exam.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is a long exam and it's going to be a lot of stress. And just know that up front, that it's going to be kind of invasive and it's going to be long and it's going to be hard. And the fact that she gives her that preface, I feel like goes a very long way to making the whole experience less awful, versus Kaitlyn Dever. No one tells her that. And so she goes in and she's being, swabbed and prodded and like all these horrible traumatizing things after she's already been traumatized by being raped.
Right.
And it's just like telling someone what they're in for could go a long way to making it a lot less stressful. And then the hospital forcing her to tell the story after they've done all the invasive exams. Oh, tell it again one more time. You got to tell us for our records. No, fuck that. You don't need to know. Get the story from somebody else.
Yeah.
Or like a situation where it's like she like tells a story and they're like, okay, now write the statement.
Right. Exactly.
Why didn't she just write the statement and tell the story as she was writing it? So she doesn't have to do the story multiple times.
How about we do this? Speech to text. I mean, come on.
Right.
Exactly. But that's the thing. There are so many people who don't know what the fuck they're doing when it comes to dealing with trauma survivors and rape survivors and domestic violence survivors. And I also thought it was really interesting that throughout the series, there are these connections made between rape and domestic violence because there is so much overlap. And Merritt Wever's making the connections and talking about it. And Dale Dickey, who, by the way, I love Dale Dickey. I always love seeing her. She's great. And she talks about the connections too. So, but so many people in the system just don't know what they're doing.
That's
Dale
right.
Dickey's
I forgot.
Great. She's great.
I completely.
I love her.
She plays like the tech person.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's like the data science person who works with Toni Collette and is like crunching numbers and making visualizations and like making tech and numbers interesting.
Yeah. There are two scenes that are really stand out to me. There's I don't know. It's Merritt Wever. She's first investigating the case, and she's got that team of 3. There's the woman who is
yes.
I can't remember. I've seen her in a million things. Oh, she's Emma Stone's best friend in Crazy Stupid Love, for one thing. But anyway, she's like clearly very good researcher or whatever. And then she's got these Merritt Wever has these 2 uniform cops, these guys. One seems like he's on the ball, and one's just a jackass.
Yeah,
you know. And so she fucking chews him out in. I wouldn't say that it's nice, but it's like the most appropriate sort of, make no mistake, you're an idiot, you know?
Yes.
And, but you also kind of get the fact that this is the only time, unless you fuck up again, I'm not going to speak to you. I don't speak to people like this, you know? This is a special case because you really fucked up.
Yeah.
You know? Which he did, by just being a fucking lazy piece of shit.
And he didn't seem to care at all.
That was I think
that is the most infuriating thing.
She just chastises him for not having a sense of urgency around this,
right?
Which it's perfectly logical when you have a crime like this. They say in the show you have a limited amount of time to solve it, and so you need to demand that things be rushed, so you're not waiting 12 days for lab results,
right? And then the other scene that I really liked was when the other intern at the end, they've asked him to do this thing, and he's just like, because he's kind of a dork, I guess, I don't know, or maybe he has a sense of urgency. He's gotten the license plate number, but he's also gotten the driver's license and the this and the that. And,
yes.
And they're like, oh my God, you got everything. And then they go and they find the rapist, which they do.
Yeah, there's some
sorry,
really
Megan,
brilliant.
I didn't mean to spoil things for you.
Oh, I'm past that.
There's
you
some
are?
really
Okay, I
brilliant
can't remember
police
which
work.
episode is which.
Yeah, they find him through some really brilliant police work over a series of episodes, and they do all of this crazy thing, stuff to narrow down to this person. And this is a multi-state crime spree. This guy's been raping people across multiple states, and
They don't know that though. They only know about Colorado. They think maybe Kansas, but it turns out it's not him.
right. But yeah, they do find out the connection to Kaitlyn Dever.
Well, he tells them once he gets busted.
No, they find it in the pictures.
Oh, that's right. And then he explains. That's right.
Yeah, they're looking through the photos from his hard drive of the different victims, and they find a set, and they're like, "Wait a minute, I don't know this person. I don't know this victim."
And it's got her driver's license.
Yeah, he took a photo of her driver's license on her chest, and so they're able to contact her and let her know. And then so she's like, "Well, are you, like first they tell the cop the cop who
the bald cop.
The bald cop.
The one who didn't believe her.
Yeah, and then he comes and sees all the evidence, and he's like, "Fuck, I'm a shitty person and
Yes,
a shitty
you are."
cop." Then he goes to basically like try to apologize, but without really apologizing, I guess. Because she goes back later and at the end and like demands an apology and says, like usually when people screw up, they actually apologize, and I have not gotten an apology from anybody. Or she demands it, and he gives it to her. He does apologize,
and it's sincere, but it doesn't change the fact that he's an idiot.
Exactly.
I forget where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so the connection, it's like, and then she finds out that this really did happen, and they were they forced her to recant her story, and she had all this trauma in her life, and so she decides to sue the city.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to finish. I can't wait to finish watching it.
And she gets a lot of money. Not enough, in my opinion, but
probably
all
not.
right.
But it leads to it's an uplifting situation where it's like they get the bad guy, and she has closure and she's able to move on. And it's
the thing that I was going to say about the not so happy is like the second victim is Danielle. What's her name?
McDonald.
Danielle McDonald. It seems like she is not recovering well at the end when the guy, I guess it's court technically, where he allocutes. Allocution? Is that what you do when you say I'm guilty? Yeah. Anyway,
Don't
I don't know.
We
should ask Shauna because I'm sure she knows. She's a lawyer, folks, not because she's like pleaded guilty to things.
She's been on the show.
I know. She has been, but she's not on the show right now, is what I'm saying. Yeah, so it seems like she's doing not so great,
Yeah, and and many of the victims are.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just everybody has their own way of dealing, and one of the women, the woman who is the frat mother, she says, I've made my life very small because of you. I don't go out, I don't do things, I do the least possible, the smallest footprint so as to not ever put myself in this situation ever again. And it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and she says to him, like, why did you, like, tell me the thing that I did that made you pick me so I never do that again. So.
Yeah. The thing that I thought was really fascinating about this that I don't find in every story about rape or about sexual assault is that what I thought the series did really, really well was that it showed how continuously the women are haunted by and triggered by certain flashbacks. Like when Kaitlyn Dever's at at her store and she's grilling the hot dogs and she's completely like breaking down because of it. And then the frat house mother is breaking down when she's like washing her hands because she's reminded of the water and how she thought she was going to drown. And I thought that the series did a really great job in reminding you, like, this is not a one-time thing that's just, it's over. And Merritt Wever talks about that trauma has a cost and that it never fully goes away and that, it's going to be carried with them forever. And it's so true. So yeah. I thought the series did a really great job.
Yeah.
As far as expressing that.
Yeah.
Agree. Yes.
Yeah. And it is the kind of thing that really it sticks with people and it, people alter their behaviors and different things can trigger that trauma, whether it be a passing comment, like the scene where Kaitlyn Dever gets in the car with those kids and they're smoking weed and they're drinking and the kid says, oh, well, you shouldn't trust me. You shouldn't let some weird guy pick you up. You should be better. Otherwise, you're going to get mugged or whatever he says. And that's a trigger.
Right. Totally.
Like
but
what you would think would be an otherwise innocent joke is a trigger to someone who's been through that trauma.
I don't think I'd make that joke, though.
No, that's a creepy, awful joke anyway. But
I wouldn't. But like you don't, people don't even consider that their words are a trigger in that way.
But it's not even just that. It can be the weirdest things, like the strangest things that you just would never even think. Like running water. Would you ever think running water would be a trigger? Right. No. But it is. And it can be, and something can happen and doesn't bother you. And then all of a sudden another time it happens and it completely triggers you and you are, unnerved and rattled. So yeah. So I thought it did a really interesting job doing that. And yeah, and I'm curious if it's because I know Islet Waldman and Michael Chabon, co-wrote the series along with Susanna Grant, and I know Islet Waldman has a legal background, so I'm wondering if how much she
also wrote a Natalie Portman movie, or it was based on one of her books, I should say. Yeah, The Other Woman.
Exactly. Yeah, but I'm wondering if through her legal background, she worked with or encountered, rape survivors, but because somebody definitely did their homework on this.
Oh, for sure.
Whether they are a survivor themselves or whether, they just worked with survivors or they consulted with them. But yeah, definitely there's so much so much attention to detail about those things that are small, but not small, obviously. They're huge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Fine series.
Really
about a very difficult subject.
Yeah.
Yes.
And as we said, the performances in it are great. Merritt Wever.
Yeah.
And,
was never a Merritt Wever fan, but now I think I'm going to get on board.
I was just going to say, I think you need to get on the Merritt Wever train because she's amazing.
I'm telling you, it's because the first thing I saw her in was Aaron Sorkin. So it's like
you gotta jettison that from your mind.
Yeah, we've been watching Nurse Jackie, and I really like her in that.
Yeah, I've only seen the first couple episodes, but yeah, she's great in it.
And she plays a very different character. She's very fun and spunky and light, and just very different from this. I love the aspect of the partners and them working together and having very different styles.
Yeah.
But still gelling and still pulling towards a common goal together.
Yeah, and they're not competing with each other. Like
No.
they're not tearing each other down. There's no competition. There's no one-upsmanship. It's just they have different styles. They talk it out. And I also love that Merritt Wever sees Toni Collette, who's also amazing in this, as a kind of like a mentor, and she looked up to her, and she met her when she was really early in her career, and
I love that whole exchange when they're sitting in the car together and they're just talking. There's several exchanges between them that are just really great. That one definitely is it. There's another one where Merritt Wever's working late at night and Toni Collette comes in with a deck of cards and they play around the gin. That was also really good.
Yeah. They have such an easy rapport with one another. Yeah, it's really great.
I feel bad not talking about Toni Collette at all, but the thing about Toni Collette is she's always amazing. Always amazing.
Always.
So it's almost like you don't need to talk about how amazing she is.
Because you just know she will be.
Toni Collette was in this. You know, she fucking carried her own weight. Yeah. And she fucking carried the show for a couple episodes too.
Right.
You know? Or
I was so excited when she was there. Like, I remembered reading about this show, and then when I saw her character show up, I was like, yes.
Well, I remember when I saw Hereditary, I didn't know anything about it. Other than she was in it because I saw the poster. And so I go to see it, and when she's sawing off her own head with piano wire, I was like, if anybody can pull that off, it's Toni Collette.
Toni Collette can.
And she did.
She gives a tour de force performance in Hereditary. She's amazing in that. And in really everything.
Yeah. Oh, Muriel's Wedding. You know what? She's not amazing in. I don't know if that's true. The first Shaft remake, you know, the one with from like 2000 or whatever. Yeah.
She's in that?
Yeah, she's in it. I met her. This is crazy. She would never remember this because I didn't introduce myself, and two, who the fuck am I? I was working at a record store, very large record store in New York City, and she was shooting Shaft, and she came in and she bought some stuff, and when she gave me her credit card, I knew who she was when I saw her, but I was like looking at her credit card like, holy shit, her fucking credit card says Toni Collette. And she looked at me and she's like, what's going on? I was like, oh, nothing. Everything's fine. And I just like ran it and like she signed the thing. I told her have a nice day and that was it. But yeah, I was like one of the few times I've actually been starstruck. So I was like, oh my God, fucking Toni Collette is just buying CDs. What the fuck? So I don't remember what she bought. Nothing. So, you know.
That's almost like the time I met Christopher Lloyd, and at Barnes & Noble when I worked there, and our friend Dee Dee Crimmins was there too, and she also waited on him as well. Yeah. Anyway, but same thing. Like he gave her his credit card, and then he went to get his ID because I guess it said like ask for ID on his card or something like that, and she's like, I don't need to see your ID. I know who you are.
Anyway, all right.
Yeah. So see Unbelievable. But do
Definitely.
note that first episode is difficult. It does have a warning at the front end of it.
Oh, it does. That's right.
Yeah, it's tough to get through, but it's like anything that's about sexual assault that's in entertainment right now, whether it be movie, television show, book, whatever, it's worth it. These are things you need to see. Everybody should be seeing them. I know that some people they can't. I'm not going to fault anybody for that.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask you, do you think everybody needs to see
No,
it?
but I feel like people should see them. Like, you can say, okay, if I can handle this, then I should watch it. I mean, there's plenty of people that don't know anything about this kind of stuff that should watch it.
Yeah.
They don't know about trauma. They don't understand trauma. They don't know enough or understand enough about, victims of sexual assault and people not believing them. Mm-hmm. That's why I think it's important for as many people to see as possible. That's why I will caveat that.
Oh, no, I actually 100% agree.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask the question, but no, I 100% agree with you that it is something
I don't think anybody should force themselves to watch something that they can't handle.
Because it can be re-triggering and it can be incredibly upsetting if you've been through it. But no, I completely agree with you. And even I feel like we may be at a point, in our conversation societally and collectively that people think, well, I know about rape and I know about sexual assault, I don't need to know anymore. But there's so much nuance to it, and there's so much more that people just don't know if they haven't been through it. That I agree. That's why people should be watching it if they can, of course.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I feel like part of my duty is to see those things. I mean, even for people who can't. So to talk about it and continue that conversation. so that more people are talking about it and more people understand it, and in turn watch it and then continue that conversation with the next person that maybe hasn't had that conversation.
I agree. I have a question for you guys.
Oh, sure.
Do you feel that you learned anything or got a better insight or anything of that sort?
Maybe. I don't know. I think that I kind of walk through life now at this stage of my life just trying to be, and I know this will sound funny considering how I come across on the mic, but trying to be sensitive to other people and their, whatever their thing is, their, for lack of a better term, let's call it their trigger.
Yep.
Because I've gotten to a place where like so much of the dismissiveness you see, people like, oh, well, in this case, oh, I know what rape is. I don't need to watch this. Or like, there's this thing going on with the Atlanta Braves right now where they're trying to phase out the tomahawk chop. And like, you've got all these people on Twitter being like, fuck, it's fucking this, whatever. Who cares? And it's like, you don't need to do the tomahawk chop, man. No. You don't need to do it. It's not going to take anything away from your experience if it doesn't happen.
To answer your question though, Megan, I don't know that I learned anything new per se, but I feel like this show really reinforced a lot of the things that I've either learned from people I know who've been through trauma or have heard about in reference to people describing their trauma in like books or articles or other shows. It was definitely, it was reinforcing and it was a good reminder to me to think more about not just the overt things you can do that can trigger people's trauma. It's like sometimes word choice even is very important to think about.
For sure. I'm going to amend my answer. I if anything, the lesson I took away from whatever is be sensitive.
I think in both cases, those are great lessons. Be sensitive and to be mindful of what you say and how you say it.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to like be in the moment somewhere and think to yourself, I have no idea what this person has been through in the 42 years before they walked into this room with me. But, if you, I really do try to like go through life just being like, man, just, this guy who's yelling at his kid, he shouldn't yell at his kid, but maybe his kid punched him in the nuts 30 seconds ago before I walked into this room. I don't know. Whatever.
In that case, your kid's a dick.
Yeah, exactly. No, you shouldn't. Don't yell at your kids, especially in public, for God's sake.
Anyway, I guess, but bringing it back around, see Unbelievable. Don't see Lucy in the Sky.
No, don't. Definitely
unless you want to have the experience of being punched in the nuts.
I was like, unless you're a masochist.
I'm good.
That's kind of what, like Lucy in the Sky is kind of like one, punch in the crotch for 2 hours.
Fair enough. I would say see The King of Comedy, and it sounds like definitely don't see Memory.
No.
The Origin of Alien.
It makes me really sad to say that, but
yeah. Yeah, if you have like any of the Alien Blu-rays or whatever, I'm sure
those.
The documentaries on those are better.
The making of features probably better than that.
Yeah.
All right, fair enough. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's Spoiler Piece Theater. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into the show. If you want to listen to the show, you can find us anywhere you get podcasts, but you can also find us at our website, which is spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on Facebook. We're Spoiler Piece Theater. We are at Spoiler Piece on Twitter and on Instagram. If you want to get in touch with us, it's very easy to do. You can either send us an email, spoilerpiece@gmail.com. You can talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you want. Or you can give us a call.
862-21-PEACE.
Leave us a voicemail. And we might play it on the show. We might talk about it. We're not making any promises.
We'll probably forget and then talk about it and be like, but we forgot to play it. But,
but it was great.
But if you disagree, agree, or you just want to say hi, we like that too.
Yeah.
We like hearing from listeners. And we like hearing from repeat listeners. So there's some people that have emailed us, on occasion.
I think that's actually the most fun. When somebody's like, that thing that you said last week was totally stupid, which is always directed at me. So,
aww.
Yeah.
People disagree with me too.
Yeah. Not much.
Yeah. So anyway, if you like the show, please rate and review us on your podcast platform of choice. This can help more people find the show. We would super duper appreciate it. And if you love the show, of course, you can go to patreon.com/spoilerpiece and sign up for a Patreon. Toss a couple bucks our way each month. You'll get access to exclusive audio. This week's exclusive audio, we talk about war games.
Yeah.
And
which is more fun than it sounds.
Yes. We also have polls. We're going to be posting a poll soon for you guys to vote on. This is usually, movies that we'll see and talk about in the exclusive audio, so you guys get to choose what we're going to watch and what we're going to talk about. And that's what we have for now, but we're working on more stuff. There's also a tier where you can pick movies, just straight up pick movies for us to watch. So that's
please keep it under 3 hours.
Yes, please do. So my name is Evan Crean. I am editor for The Independent. I am co-chair of BAFCA and co-author of your 80s movie guide to better living. And you can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
I'm Dave Riedel. I write for Salt Lake City Weekly and Orlando Weekly, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd. Actually, yes, all three is Dave Sees Movies.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm Megan Kearns. I'm the editor of Bitchflix. I'm a freelance writer. And you can find me on Twitter at OpinionessWorld.
Bye.
Bye.
Onion rings.
Onion rings.
Onion rings out.